Folks, it's real simple. It's time to act. It's long past time to act.
The United States is being overrun by the Biden migrant crime.
They desperately need more resources. They need more agents, more officers, more judges.
This is a Joe Biden invasion.
Join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill.
You look at what this Governor Newsom from California, isn't that his name, Newsom?
So instead of playing politics with the issue, why don't we just get together and get it done?
I call him Crooked Joe because he's crooked. He's a terrible president.
Newsom, you know you are getting to Donald Trump when he gives you your own bespoke nickname. Matthew, what caught your attention in this split screen? Very different visits.
Well, I mean, it's dramatically different because one is just completely saying outrageous things and wants nothing to be done on it so he can use it as an issue. And the president is actually trying to solve the problem that exists, that most Americans know exists and want it solved. So it's actually, think it's really smart of Joe Biden to weigh in to the immigration debate. I think for too long, Democrats have played defense on it, on the immigration and the border, and have got behind the 8 ball on it. I think it's very, very smart for him to just walk right into this and say, this is what we want to do, and then do nothing. Congress and Donald Trump want nothing to be done on it. So I think it's a great contrast to benefit Joe Biden.
Do you think it's going to break through, Matthew? Because polling shows that Donald Trump, immigration is kind of the perfect issue for him. It's a guttural issue for voters. He knows how to stoke things. And Republicans, while they don't have a plan, have been the ones leading, at least talking about it. And you just said it, until now, Democrats have been somewhat quiet.
Well, I see these issues, and there's going to be multiple issues that are going to decide the presidential race, one of which is immigration, one of which is the economy, and one of which is democracy as a whole. Those 3 issues, I think, are going to be decisive in this election. Republicans have a big advantage on immigration. But I think what you want to do in a political sense, I think substantively, Joe Biden administration, President Biden wants to solve the problem. But from a politics standpoint, he wants to neutralize the advantage that Donald Trump and the Republicans have on this issue. I think they will still, come November, have an advantage on this issue. But if you can neutralize it to a degree, and then simultaneously hope you solve the problem, which is ultimately what we want to do here. But I think it's smart because Joe Biden understands they have an advantage. Let's try to neutralize it while we try to get the problem solved.
Victoria, right-wing media is talking nonstop about migrant crime, but I pointed it out just a minute ago. NBC analysis shows that overall crime levels have actually dropped in the cities that have gotten the most migrants, places like New York, Chicago, and LA. How do Democrats get the actual facts out there? Because besides right-wing media, when you talk to people in those cities, they don't feel it.
And Stephanie, this isn't the first time. I mean, this is a replay of 2016. Think back to that election where Donald Trump leaned heavily on the Angel families. He leaned heavily again on migrant crime. This was something that was key to his campaign, and it's because of anxiety. And we know from psychological research that anxiety is one of the strongest emotions that we have, and it's an emotion that presses us to act politically, to act in different ways. And we've seen this. We saw this in 2016. We're getting a taste of it right now. But again, there is nothing new under the sun. These are the same tactics that we saw used during the Chinese Exclusion Act era. These are the same tactics of fear that we saw during the National Quota Origins Act bill. Immigration has always stoked this fear, and Donald Trump has really hit on how to do it in this moment.
Peter, your analysis piece today is headlined, Biden takes an opportunity to shift from defense to offense at the border. Did Donald Trump give Joe Biden the gift of this election by blocking that border deal?
Yeah, in a way he did, right? Because up until now, as Matt said, the Democrats haven't really wanted to talk about immigration for obvious reasons. It's not a good issue for them. They're not going to win on this issue among the voters who care most about it. And so you haven't seen Biden go to the border and talk about it. You haven't seen him give speeches about it. This is only the second time he's gone to the border. But he's gone because the Republicans gave him something to say. And they gave him somebody to blame, which is to say themselves and Donald Trump. Up until now, the Republicans had a pretty clear shot at pointing the finger at President Biden, saying, saying, well, he hasn't done anything. He's responsible for this. It's Biden's invasion. But because they blocked the bill, and it was a bipartisan bill negotiated by a very conservative Republican senator from Oklahoma, he can say, no, 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 guys, this isn't my issue. The issue is the Congress and the Republicans in the House and the former president of the United States who don't want to solve the problem. They only want an issue. And Donald Trump walked into that by, in fact, even putting on social media that he didn't want this to pass because he didn't want to give Joe Biden a win. Well, that's not somebody who actually cares about the issue when you say it that way. That's somebody who cares about having a campaign, argument to make. And that's the argument that he's handed Joe Biden to make. He wouldn't have gone to the border if it hadn't been for Donald Trump giving him this, this opportunity.
Walk right into it. Victoria, where does the Hispanic vote fit into all of this? They're the second fastest growing ethnic group of American voters, and we know they have moved to the right in recent elections, especially in Florida.
And the other thing is the size, Stephanie. Over the course of the last 20 years, the Hispanic electorate has nearly doubled. So I think that's a really important point to keep in consideration. And look, it boils down to diversity within the Latino population. We tend to think of Latinos as Democrats, and yes, they tend to lean Democratic, sometimes more during certain elections, sometimes less. But we have been seeing a cleaving toward the Republican Party with certain Latino demographics. And this is something of concern for the Democrats. They need to not assume. There's been a lot of assumption that Latinos are a lock for the Democratic Party. So I think it's very much not making this assumption. And not only the partisan assumption, Stephanie, the fact that Latinos could just stay home, and that would be equally dangerous for the Democratic Party. So it's not just worrying about, oh, are they going to go over to Trump, but what are we going to do to get them off their couches, out of their house, into the poll?
Matthew, let's talk about this, because polls show that while voters actually trust Trump more to secure the border, they trust Biden more to deal with migrants humanely. Neither of those things are a surprise. The surprise is that when Trump was in office, it seemed preposterous that he wanted to build a wall. Most voters thought that was ridiculous. Yet more and more Americans seem to be saying, I don't know, maybe I'm open to a wall idea.
Well, I mean, that's the fundamental sort of disconnect that I think we see often in conversations about this issue with the American public, because the American public has a two-way, they want this approached in two ways. They want the border secured. That's what they want, a strong hand at the border, secure the border. And simultaneously, they're empathetic and compassionate and have strong, big hearts towards the plight of the people that are coming over here. Everyone on this panel, including myself, I'm sure, is a son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, great-grandson, granddaughter of an immigrant. The United States of America's economy, its agriculture, its infrastructure, has all been built by immigrants. And I sit in Texas, as you know. If we got rid of immigration as it exists today, we'd have no construction industry in Texas. We'd have no hotel and restaurant industry in Texas, and we'd have no grocery. Talk about the price of groceries going up, the price of groceries going up. And so I think the American public in many ways understands that. But I think, as was stated, when fears rise of things, and many of them are just pictures of things they see and all of that, they rise, and there's some, charismatic leader, let's call them, points the finger. And as was said, this has been done in numerous other times in our history. It was done in the 1920s. It was done in the 1880s. It was done in the 1840s and 1850s. It's been done throughout our history. When anxiety and fears rise, somebody comes along and whether it's the KKK or the Know Nothing Party or whomever, or Donald Trump, points the finger and says, here's the problem. That's the issue. And people lose their minds and forget all these facts that were presented in here. And I think that's what you have to do. I think the conversation has to be about both approaches: secure border, compassion towards the people that are in this plight and are only coming here for their families and for jobs.
Victoria, that's kind of the thing that Matthew's hitting on. There's this false economic premise out there that Americans are believing migrants are taking my jobs, they're filling my school, they're getting things that I'm not getting. But that's not the case. We have a huge labor shortage in this country. Immigrant labor is something we need. If we had mass deportations, it would hurt our economy dramatically. How does the Biden administration explain this to the American people? How do we get it into the American psyche? Because it sells faster and easier and quicker? Fear.
The frame that's used is a zero-sum game, right? If immigrants get stuff, then that means we Americans don't get it. That is completely and utterly false. And I think it's trying to shift the narrative to a win-win one in terms of saying these folks are coming over, they are fulfilling their American dream. To Matthew's point, we still do have that narrative of the melting pot down deep inside of us, but they're also keeping our inflationary rate down, right? The reason we have been able to recover so quickly is because we have this labor force at the ready. And all of this just drives me crazy, because if we had regularized legal immigration, if we had a work permit system, if we had the institutional might to normalize immigration, we wouldn't have the crisis at the border, we wouldn't have this fear stoking, and we would all be better off, including folks seeking out that American dream. It really can be a win-win.
Peter, we've just walked through it over the last 10 minutes. President Biden is putting this front and center. He's considering executive action on asylum restrictions, pushing this border bill. But when is it too late to change public perception on immigration? Republicans have dominated this narrative, whether it's true or not, the arguments they make, for years.
Well, I think Matt's right to the point that he's not going to convince the Trump voters to vote for him on border issues. He's not going to convince them he is tougher than Trump. It's just not going to work. What he's trying to do is give an answer to those independents and Democrats who are concerned about this. And so obviously, a lot of the fear of immigration we've been talking about is part of this issue, but it's also a sense on the part of people who aren't maybe as afraid of immigration, but the sense that there's something disorderly about what's happening, right? That it has to happen on a more, regular basis, a legal basis, not just numbers kind of going through the roof. And they're looking for some sort of answer from the president. The president's giving them an answer that he hasn't given them for 3 years, which is, I'm on top of it now. And so for those voters who are inclined to vote for him, he's at least given them something to hang on to. Say, okay, all right, I haven't thought that Biden done very much about the border, but I see that he's on it now, and I can at least give him some credit. And I do think these Republicans torching the legislation in Congress are clearly out for politics, not for substance. That would be the argument he's trying to make. Again, not for the build a wall crowd. He's not going to win them over. He's not trying to. He's just trying to give the Democrats and the independents who are at least possible Biden voters, but are queasy about the border, something to hang on to.